Hey everyone, we are back with another one of our 2017 San Diego Comic-Con prep videos. As usual in the series here, these are really intended for people that are new or people that need refreshers, maybe people that aren't as much into something. So for example, if you're specifically a panel person, this might help to remind you some nuances of the floor, go over some updates, things that have changed on the floor, and just some observations from last year. For us, the floor is our #1 priority. We visit every booth. We visited every booth at Comic-Con since like 2005. We make sure to walk them all, and many of the booths we visit numerous times over the course of the weekend. So the floor is something that we enjoy quite a bit, really comfortable with, so we will kind of share any info there. But again, as veterans or even people maybe you've only gone one time but you just have some info, please jump in the comments section and share that. If there's anything, for example, we always bring up gaming is not as much our thing, so there might be definitely some things that Blizzard does that we're not as clear on, or Capcom or something like that. So feel free, jump in the comments section. Maybe you have your own guide to some part of Comic-Con. Again, jump into the comments section, leave it. The whole reason we do this is just to help people out to have a great time at Comic-Con, and so we just share what we know, and we don't know everything by any means. So hopefully everyone can help each other out. Additionally, got to state right up front too, anything that you are looking for help for, the unofficial San Diego Comic-Con blog probably has a guide for it. So definitely check that out. If you're looking for what signings are there going to be, how to do the tickets for the signings, different exclusives, where they line up, where to line up for panels, how big a room is for panels. I mean, literally like guides for days and days and days. It's so rare that there's a question that can't be answered by checking over there at SDCCblog.com. Additionally to that, though, we also have a set of podcasts. If you head over to iTunes or Stitcher, look for Parks and Cons. By the time we get to the con, currently we have 2 podcasts up prepping for this year. We'll have a 3rd one going up later this week. And then again, there's that series of videos that you can find over at SDCCblog.com. That we've been working on, and also over on our YouTube channel at Parks and Cons. If you check out the San Diego Comic-Con 2017 playlist, you'll find that there. So with that being said, as we're going to navigate the floor and look at some things here, we're going to talk about some of the differences this year. For example, something like a Netflix hitting the floor, there is going to be a very, different mix to the floor, and so that'll be fun. We'll talk about implications for that. But before we get to any of that, the biggest question we get beyond where to get something is what time to line up to get something. So somebody wants to get the ticket for the Hasbro drawing, or they want to get their Hallmark ornament, or they want to get a giant Gentle Giant bust. Whatever it might be, the question is obviously where on the floor can we find these things, but additionally beyond that is what time to line up. So let's address the lining up part. And again, the video today is more meant to look at the floor, not specific strategies for, what time to line up for a ticket to this or that. And again, there's guides for that over at SDCCblog.com. But in terms of lining up, obviously, it has become more and more a thing at Comic-Con to camp out, and that is not something we are fans of at all. We love Comic-Con. We get in the Monday before, we leave the Monday after, we fully immerse in it. But part of how I think we keep our batteries charged and enjoy all of it and keep loving it is we don't burn the candle maybe on both ends the way that some do, meaning that we're not camping out at 2 in the morning. So for us, our lineup time for the floor is usually around 7:30 in the morning, which is very late for most people. And I know we also have a Facebook group over at Parks and Cons of attendees that are kind of helping each other out. And I mean, it feels like everybody in the group is talking about how they're going to line up at this time or that time. And, if there's something that you want that desperately and that you can't find other ways, then that may be a necessity. And so, again, we can only answer from our perspective, but for us, the biggest goals in the morning usually are going to be, picking up swag at some of these various booths, which we'll talk about, and hitting some of the exclusives that have lineups here. We may be doing some sales lineups above for ticket drawings. For example, Hasbro is something of interest to us, so we're still kind of working that out. The last year or two, we've really gotten into trades of being able to pick up different things, whether it's swag signings or stuff like that, and trading it for the 1 or 2 things. I've got to admit, as the years have gone on, I went from the guy that needed everything at some of these booths to the guy that needs like 1 or 2 things at some of the booths, so it's been a very different thing. I mean, again, 5-6 years ago, I wanted almost everything at Hasbro, almost everything at Gentle Giant, almost everything at Mattel, Lego, maybe some stuff at a Bandai over the years. But again, that's really changed. Interests have not necessarily changed in terms of I don't like the stuff anymore. It's just, you know, as a collector, you start to run out of room, and you start to say, you also start to see that some of these things don't quite hold the same value, meaning a lot of them still stay valuable, but a lot of the things can be picked up on eBay 6 months later for only maybe a slight inflation. You know, we've definitely done that with some things with Funko where they're still more expensive, but in the end, maybe paying 40 bucks more for the pop is worth it, finding some, you know, great deal in December after Comic-Con than all it was going to take to camp out and get that. Now, interesting, with Funko this year, they are not allowing press or volunteers to even participate in their lottery. So that could be a change too, and we are press at Comic-Con, so, you know, exclusives may become a thing that we're not even allowed to participate in at some of these booths, and so Funko is definitely amongst that this year. So we don't even have the debate of whether we want to do Funko or not because we're not allowed to, which that's a whole different topic. Not sure, totally agree with at least volunteers. I don't know about press, but volunteers kind of think everybody should be able to participate in whatever parts of the con while still covering and volunteering and all that. But that said, it really doesn't matter what the feeling are. The rules are what the rules are. So that said, now that we talked a little bit about what time lineup, I mean, if you want to do a good swag run, if your goal is to have a fun time for the first hour of the con one of these mornings and pick up a bunch of freebies, yeah, I think 7:30 is a good time to get there. Maybe even 8 o'clock, you can still, you know, do a good job. Probably 8:30 even. I mean, really, that first hour, you can pick up a lot of freebies, as long as it doesn't have to be, you know, a WB thing, or it doesn't have to be an ABC thing. It's just finding fun stuff and looking for opportunities there. If it is, though, specific to, you know, exclusives, if it has to be, you know, I'm going to be getting in line for Bandai the night before, you know, a lot of people are lining up at 9 or 10 o'clock or whatever it might be there. So again, follow along. Social media is my biggest suggestion. Whenever people ask, we're getting a lot of questions about D23 Expo as well. Whenever people ask the question of when should I get in line for X, my honest response is you just have to monitor social media and be ready to move at whatever time. And so if I were going to say, well, I have to get in line for a Lego ticket in sales, I would be monitoring social media like crazy, and I would be ready to move at 9 p.m. the night before, or even 3 p.m. the day before, but I would be watching social media because maybe I don't need to. If I get to 10 o'clock at night and it's looking like the everything else line seems not so dominating, then maybe, and we'll talk about the difference between the everything else line, Hall H line in a moment, then maybe I can sleep a little bit extra, take a 4-hour, you know, if I want to call it that, a nap overnight, and wake up and see what things are looking like at 3 or 4 in the morning. One thing about Comic-Con, if you are monitoring Twitter, which really that's where everything moves, that is where the information is going to be moving most quickly, everything is hitting in a 24-hour cycle there. There is no off time. So you could get up at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. There's going to be constantly be line updates. So with that, now let's talk about where you do line up if we're just talking about getting onto the floor. And again, that's the specific focus of this video. So we want to get on the floor because we want to hit the Netflix booth, we want to hit Lucasfilm Pavilion, whatever it might be. So with that being said, then the line, there's going to be 2 lines outside the convention center. So this is obviously our first floor exhibit hall map here. If we're going to think now outside, out behind, there's going to be 2 lines that are kind of circling off over to the Hilton Bayfront area and around the back and zigzagging all over the place, probably pretty crazy. And those 2 lines, one is going to be for Hall H, real simple there, and the everything is going to be for everything else. So remember, the everything else, that's a lot. Don't be intimidated by the everything else line, because the everything else line is everything else. I mean, 4,000 of the people in front of you in line may be going to ballroom 20, maybe more than that. So it's an easy thing, especially if you're new to the con, to get there and see the everything else line zigzagging down past the marina and all this stuff and feel like, wow, defeated, I'm just going to go back to bed or get some breakfast. Don't worry about that at all, because what's going to happen is when you get in that everything else line, ultimately, they're going to move you into the convention center, which times can vary there, but you could figure around 6, 7 a.m. that's going to be making your way in. Everybody's going to tap in with their RFID, and then they're going to come in here on the first floor, okay, right into this area around Hall C. And in that area, then, you're going to go up escalators. Again, they're going to be checking badges and all that. Again, we're on the 2nd floor now, above all of this. We're not even going to see any of this because we're above it. And we're making our way back here, and you're going to have 2 options once you make your way up the escalator. So from the everything else line, it splinters into 2 directions, primarily if we're going to the floor. Now, some people, aside from the floor, some people are going to shoot right into the ballroom 20 line, and they're going to line up there, and that's going to be their spot for the day or for however many hours, and you're not worried about that. But for the floor, we either have the choice of circling over here and lining up in what will be the equivalent of Hall H, but above Hall H. So we'll be waiting there to come down the escalator at about GH area. The other people will be heading over here, and they will be at these escalators where they ultimately come down over in the sales pavilion. Now, you may have, if you're a longtime con vet, you know that this used to be called the secret entrance. This was like the exclusive swag hunter, exclusive hunter. I mean, those were the days. We would, get here at 8 and just roll over here and be right at the front of this line and make our way to the floor, relatively speaking. Now, they pretty evenly distribute people. They're kind of pushing people in directions. People know the drill enough. There's enough sites and videos like this one that have given away those secrets. So not the biggest deal in terms of which direction. Now, if you have a party that's a larger in terms of a group, you might want to splinter off and have people check both directions to see. You also, if you're part of a group, may just want to separate and say, hey, you guys are going to head over here to the Marvel DC booth. We're going to go check out Netflix and WB or whatever and splinter that way. It does become about geography then. The people that are entering over here are going to make their way, and they're going to be kind of entering into this small press pavilion area once the time actually comes, and they'll be coming from this way. The people over here will be coming from this way, and so it just becomes a question of what side you are interested in there. Now, with that being said, do make sure to note the floor will be open at 9 a.m. for those coming down the escalator. People get confused. Every year we get questions about this, that people will come, they'll get there at 8:50 or something, and they'll end up lined up in front of these various halls here. And they'll see people being let in, and they're like, what's going on? Why are people running around the floor and they won't let me in? The rule is, what's supposed to happen is 9 a.m. for these people that lined up as they were supposed to in the everything else line and came over to here. Everybody that's getting there kind of last minute, if they're not being pushed up the escalator, they're just going to wait there patiently until everything is cleared. Once everybody is in from up in these two areas, security should get the call on the walkie-talkie to let people in this way. Now, we've been down in this area before. There's maybe a Sunday, I think it was a couple years ago, where we're like, yeah, we don't even want to line up. We're just going to kind of wander in, and we were just waiting right here, and security just let us in when they weren't supposed to. So those things are going to happen with everything with Comic-Con. Mileage is going to vary by security staff, by exhibitor staff. I mean, don't be surprised if somebody at the Netflix booth tells you one thing and then 5 minutes later someone else tells you the other thing. Remember, these are all people putting on this event for a 4 or 5 day period here. These are not full-time employees that work the Lego booth, 360 days out of the year, whatever it is. So do double check things and understand sometimes there's just going to be dumb luck. Sometimes, people are going to skip a line and not even know they skipped a line, and those things are going to happen. So once we have made our way in, let's talk about kind of these two options, and let's first talk about sales and if we're coming in from that area. So obviously, if our goal is to make it over to the gaming area, it's a really simple decision to go to sales, because we're going to go sales, we're going to come out here, and we're just going to make that hard, what will be a left for us as we come out those escalators, and we're going to head over there to Blizzard and to the rest of those things. And it's going to be just an easy call there to get over there to Capcom and Nintendo and Xbox and the rest of those in that area. Very simple decision, very easy. If you're not running for swag, the suggestion would be just stay out of the way of the crowds. If you're just getting there early to start doing aisles, I would head over to the other side actually and start doing aisles here, because these are the aisles that are going to get the most crowded, because they are those big exhibitors that are going to be having big signings and things like that. So just get it out of the way early. But if you want to jump on the newest game at Nintendo or whatever, you're going to want to head that other way. Now, for those of you that are going to be coming down the escalator though, and you want to head over to Sideshow or Marvel or DC, you're going to want to make your way. First off, if we're trying to get to this area, definitely this is the path, or this is the path of least resistance, staying on this side of the booth. So as you come out the escalator, and remember, always walk, don't run. Security will remind you that we never run, we always walk. But obviously you can walk fast this way, this way. Be careful if you hook down into this. This is great if you want to check out what kind of freebies DC and Marvel are giving away. but it gets really bogged down with traffic in there. So do be aware of that. If you're just trying to get to the Lucasfilm Pavilion, don't go this way. Suggest going this way or this way and up around. It's sometimes, you know, going to be more steps, just miles on your feet, but in the end going to be a lot easier than get caught up in some crazy lines there. Now Marvel does a lot of different types of things at their booth. They've become a booth that we've really just avoided a lot over the last few years because, you know, in 2010, 2011, maybe even 12, it was like our #1 booth on the floor. DC too, but as the films have gotten just bigger and bigger and bigger, it's just become such madness there that, yeah, we dip in here and there, grab, you know, the Thor Ragnarok poster they're giving out or whatever, but we really don't spend a ton of time at those booths, so they're kind of low priority for us in the morning. Do make sure at the Sideshow booth to watch out. They usually are giving out gift cards, and so now the thing is, you've got to use the gift card towards something Sideshow, and obviously that's going to probably be more than the $25 or $50 card that you get there, but it is something that you can use there. So we'll talk more about booths in specific, but I just want to kind of talk about entry points first up, so or wherever we're at, third up at this point. So coming in that way. Now, conversely, if we're going to come in over on this side, we're going to be entering right about here into Artist Alley. And then we're ultimately probably going to some of these booths. Now remember, Funko's doing their drawing, so there's not going to be a ton of purpose to run over there for anything. Loungefly's also, now that they've acquired that, going to be over there, so maybe you want to grab an exclusive bag, something like that. But for the most part, people are going to be kind of coming into this area here, especially if you're hunting swag. This is going to be the sweet spot for the swag here, is all of these big booths, because they obviously have the money to give away bags and shirts and posters and all of those different types of things there. Great photo ops, you know, AMC, you know, we've got to expect that they're going to have a great Walking Dead photo op, because they always have a great Walking Dead setup there, so why wouldn't they this year? And things can change, obviously, but we do want to, you know, keep an eye out for those things. So coming in this way, the suggestion then would be, if we're going obviously WB, as you come in, just shoot straight back there. That's always that. And ABC, there's a reason there's some distance between them, because there's going to be crazy lines back there. If we're heading over here, again, any of these rows should work pretty okay. It's just a matter, a lot of times I'll come up this way and then a zig and a zag and then there to wherever I'm going in these booths. And these again are some pretty good spots in the morning there for freebies and things like that. Now, no matter what the past has been, we can't know what the current future will be in terms of what they're giving away. So, you know, there's reason to investigate, there's reason to look at all these booths, but in the end, let's talk a little bit about some things maybe we can expect from the booths now that we have really our two options in terms of hitting the floor. Now, one thing to remember, it's going to be very rare that any swag item is going to only be handed out in that first half hour or hour. It's going to most likely be handed out throughout the day. So we're on the floor at 9 a.m. The rest of the people getting in at 9:30, probably until about 10:30. A lot of these booths are going to be handing out things periodically. They may say they're out of something and then it shows back up. Lionsgate last year, they're like, we're out of t-shirts. And I stepped to the side for like a minute and then there's the t-shirts again. And the employees, sometimes because they just want people out of their face, and a lot of times though because they don't know, they're like, I'm out. Well, then here comes the next box of them. So, you know, if there's something that you see that you're really interested in at one of these booths that's a freebie, you might want to hang out for a few minutes and keep an eye on that. More likely though, you know, I'm going to circle back and come back, and like I said, we'll talk about Netflix in a minute, because that's kind of the big, you know, variable this year. But circling back to them and saying, okay, well, now do they have it? Now do they have it? Anchor Bay, which I don't believe has a booth at Comic-Con this year. At least we didn't see them on the exhibit map. Maybe they're under a different name. They've always given away those Walking Dead bags. Last year was Walking Dead on one side, Ash vs. Evil Dead. So if you followed along with this, you know it's like one of my favorite things at Comic-Con, just because they're great for carrying to conventions. They hold comic books well, and all those things. And so even though it's not maybe one of the biggest booths, it's right in that area, and I've made sure to make it a constant kind of stop by there. So now what has happened over the years is people will talk about, you know, swag not being as big of a thing. And for sure, swag in the way of physical items has become much less than it used to be, for sure. It used to be every, you know, other booth was handing out a t-shirt. It was just nuts, you know, nice posters, not just little, you know, mini posters, but nice posters. And now it has shifted. I think AMC is a really good example of what it is now, is more and more have gotten into photo ops, bringing some actors out, putting the money into experiences, because the AMC Walking Dead photo op will spread like wildfire on social media without them having to put much effort into it, really. They don't have to encourage people to share that picture of them with Negan, because people will share that picture of them with Negan. It just is what it is. Whereas you give them a t-shirt, maybe people wear it, maybe they don't. I know I have a lot of Comic-Con t-shirts from 2008 to 2014 that I've never worn. Some of them because they're collectibles and I like them just like that, and some of them because they just, you know, weren't really my thing, but I grabbed them at the time and I'll give them as a contest, or I'll give them to a friend or whatever. And so photo ops and virtual reality experiences will be plenty. And again, you can find what booths are doing what a lot of times, a little bit of info at least, over at sdccblog.com. They'll have whatever's been released. But a lot of times you're just not going to know until you get there on the floor and you're running around, you find things. And so as you're making your way around, keep that in mind. BBC America, Nickelodeon with their exclusives are going to be packed there. One thing also to note in this area there, 4429, which, where's our 4429? It's right over in this area, right? Yeah. So 4429 is going to be kind of a new, not a new player on the scene because they've been there for many years, but Toddland is going to be taking over this area. They're going to have Family Guy and Bob's Burgers exclusives, and they're going to be right here on the row. So with already the craziness that is 20th Century Fox, they're usually giving out those poster tubes and you have a big clogged artery there. We'd imagine they're going to be super busy because they have amazing exclusives. Definitely something to check out. But it is a reason to watch as you're making your way. If you're in that morning trying to just get over to here, it might be better to come up this way and zag around or something like that, because that line's going to be big. Now this is a wide aisleway, and again, sometimes, you know, the floor just evolves. We have over on parksandcons.com, you could check out our 2016 Storify, which basically, if you've never looked at Storify, it keeps all of the social media for a specific event. So we have our 2016 San Diego Comic-Con Storify. And so if you can follow us all the way from Monday setup all the way, but we do a couple times just our run through the floor, and I document in real time on Twitter, this is what we're getting here, this is what we're getting here, this is what we're getting here. So we will be sharing things. If you're following on Twitter, we'll be sharing in real time. But you can also go there to see how frenetic things are and how things are popping up. And what's there is not even everything that we are picking up and gathering. All right, so Funimation, they usually have their Funko Pops pretty busy. Now, a big change this year that, you know, probably won't impact a lot of people unless you're there specifically for Lionsgate. Lionsgate is not really bringing it in a big way this year, whether it be panel rooms or otherwise, but very interesting, they have cut their normal giant booth in half, and now they're sharing it with Disney Music Emporium. Now, Disney Music Emporium is usually down here. They get their own crowd. Lionsgate normally has done a really good job with swag over the years, lots of t-shirts and posters and things like that, even into last year with Power Rangers. And normally it's a big old vortex of people here. With Disney Music Emporium, that's obviously going to change, so it might mean Lionsgate just isn't going to have much to give out either, but it is going to be worth a check. It could be it could go from something that was a constant hit to just an every once in a while thing to nothing at all. We could probably count Stars as having some sort of photo op there. Square Enix, this is going to be a lot of stuff on display there. Cartoon Network, interactive opportunities there, and photo ops, things like that. Now, Netflix being new, you know, Netflix being new is a very interesting thing, because it's been years now that Comic-Con fans have wanted Netflix to come, and they're going big this year. I mean, they've got a giant, not giant, but a big old booth on the floor. They've got space off-site. They've got a number of panels, so Netflix is all in on Comic-Con this year. I would think that that would also go into what they're giving away. They have so many properties. I would think that they have a ton of swag things. Now, it's obviously going to be a very popular booth, so it'll be really interesting to watch what they do. It could just be a number of photo ops. It could be something bigger than that. Definitely something to keep an eye on there. Weta Workshop, always great for photo ops. Tons of amazing things on display there, but not anything, you know, at open to really worry about too much. Bandai lining up above. Gentle Giant always has some really good exclusives there, although over the years, they've really kind of changed some of the types of things. I mean, like this year seems to be really going even more on the higher end, and by higher end I mean those $70, $80 plus items, but we always like checking out what they have. They usually have a lot of cool things as exclusives, as well as cool things to take pictures with. All right, so as we make our way over here, really important to just note with Hasbro, Mattel, you'll notice duplicate booths there. If you're new to the floor, that may not make sense to you. These are the display booths where they have the items for the upcoming year and signings and all of those kinds of cool things going on. And these are the booths where you actually are making purchases and sliding that credit card. So again, pre-sale from Mattel, whole different story. Pick that up over at the hotel there. If you are buying from them in the morning though, you'll be making your way over here, lining up. Hasbro, we have a whole separate video about that because that's a monstrous task there all the way around. Lego, they have some cool things on display there, fun stuff for the kids to do, a couple little signings maybe here and there. We really love targeting the signings though at Hasbro and Mattel because they have some great things. It's definitely not going to be, you know, A+ quality talent. You're not going to find, you know, Chris Evans there, Jeremy Renner, anything like that, but you will find some old school toy designers. You might find an Ashley Eckstein, a Dave Filoni, people like that there, which we like. It's fun to go by there, check out what they've got going on. Now, Lucasfilm, this is going to be where all things Star Wars are with Last Jedi coming out. We can expect a big push for that. I'm guessing D23 Expo being the week before. We'll see how much overlap is there in terms of what they present. We know Lucasfilm isn't having a panel though at Comic-Con, so really their entire presentation is going to be in there. You'll also find various publishers. You'll have Hallmark in there, etc. Great photo ops, as we talk about with photo ops, especially with Lego and Lucasfilm more than any. Great things to try and take pictures of the last 5 or 10 minutes of one of the days and not in the middle of the day when everything is most crowded. If you don't need anything, whenever you don't need something from these booths, avoid this area. You know, as you're making your way, let's say you're coming from Konami to get to Dark Horse, I'd even go so far as suggesting to go out and come back in this way, or go up and go around. A lot of times people, I mean, it's obviously just the way we think. It's like the most direct route is this, but this is definitely not the most direct route, as Gentle Giant has lines over here, maybe Hasbro has some stuff, photo ops, cosplayers all mixed in. It's a really, really busy and ugly artery all the way around here. And I would argue maybe that this is the ugliest of arteries of all of Comic-Con pretty consistently, outside of, you know, specifically maybe a WB, you know, the Game of Thrones cast makes their way over there or something like that, or I should say some other entity makes their way over there. But as they're bringing people in on the floor and things like that, that can be, you know, a crazy, crazy situation. Coming over here, and if you notice, there's kind of the transition from, you know, mostly studios to mostly toys to now mostly comics. Now, there's exceptions, obviously. Funko's off over there in the other direction, and you know they're going to fit things where they fit best, but there does try to make sense. Then you go from your big publishers to smaller publishers to, you know, you got small press, you've got web comics over here as well. Now for Dark Horse, Image, IDW, all of them, Marvel, DC, they all have some pretty good signings that can take place. You just really have to keep an eye. We always go by the booth and see. We had a really great signing over for the anniversary of X-Files a few years ago, and got Gillian Anderson and really everybody but David Duchovny practically. Some of the bigger names were there to sign the comics. That was a cool thing. Dark Horse got Joss Whedon there before. Firefly, Serenity people have been there. A lot of different cool signings that kind of go unrecognized sometimes for these. Now Marvel and DC, if they're having a big time signing, it doesn't go unrecognized. You know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is such a powerhouse. That said, again, can get really crowded and ugly in this area with so many little celebrity things going on, people fighting for their, you know, Thor Ragnarok poster, whatever it might be. Definitely worth checking out, especially some really cool exhibits usually over at DC. Last year, they had some great stuff there from the movies and stuff, and so it's really fun. Again, one of those things, last 10 minutes of the show can be a fun place to hit. Alex Ross Museum of Art, really. If you're interested in DC, Marvel, even the Beatles, Universal Monsters, all sorts of great things to see there. Bongo for all your Simpson comics. You got Aspen, Graffiti usually hooked up with DC with some little exclusives there as well. Boom, bringing various smaller signings. Image has a bunch of smaller signings in the back as well. I think we already talked about Sideshow. You know, they've got great galleries there, as well as some really cool gift cards that they give away. But mainly, you know, it's kind of like a museum walking through there and seeing all that is coming up. Now, one thing to note just with the various booths kind of that make up this big meet in between here and gaming. These are a lot of the other types of vendors. You've got, you know, Penguin Random House mixed in there. You've got Stylin' Online and a Bluefin, and, you know, all sorts of independent vendors that you might see at a place like Frankenstein if you're familiar with Southern California. You've got tons of comics. I mean, all of these things are probably going to be, in many cases, maybe a little pricier sometimes than what you are, you know, expecting if you were going to go find them somewhere else, but you are at Comic-Con and everything has a price here. What's great though, and we suggest hitting all of these booths, is because you do find deals, you do find all kinds of cool stuff there. They are going to oftentimes have exclusives that they got over from here, and they're not always going to be outrageously priced. I mean, it just really depends. We will share things as we go along. As I said in the past, we are going to be live tweeting everything cool that we find, so it's going to be, you know, a feed basically specifically for people at San Diego Comic-Con those days, and so hopefully that will help you find some things. But in this area, if you find something you really love, grab it, and you can forward it, obviously. If there's something that you like and you're not quite sure about the price though, put it on a list and come back on Sunday. We always find good deals in here on Sunday. Always find good deals. But again, you know, with your webcomics, your small press pavilion, artist alley, all of those areas, it's great to also see the various people that are there. I mean, you've got all kinds of talent. You can help support these artists because it's not at all cheap for anyone. Again, SDCCblog.com has featured some great stuff there. You've got, you know, your Nerdbot and your Patrick Ballesteros and so many others. In that UTT, the Under the Tents column, you can find just the coolest things that are taking place. And if you don't take the time to walk all the rows and you don't take the time to read the million articles there, it's very likely you're going to miss something at that booth or that booth or that booth. So again, people's priorities are different. I'm guessing if you're watching this video, you're probably pretty interested in the floor. So if you can, break it up or give yourself a goal over the days. Is, you know, day one, I'm going to hit these booths. Day two, I'm going to hit these booths, or so on and so forth. A lot of times these booths in the middle get a lot of attention and will get hit inadvertently. For a lot of people, this is Comic-Con when they think of the floor, and especially like on something like preview night where they're going to hit. But there's a ton of cool things to be seen all over the place. Last thing to be said about the floor is be aware, over the years, one thing that has really changed in convention culture is with the rise of so many cons, a lot of these exclusives become shared exclusives now. It makes more economic sense for the companies, and in that way, they're able to, you know, split costs. So for example, Hasbro just announced an exclusive yesterday. It's going to be shared with Fan Expo. And what that means, obviously, is you can buy it at San Diego Comic-Con. If you can't get it there, it'll be at Fan Expo. So it's not like eBay will be the only other option. But even if, let's say you're from San Diego, you're not going to Fan Expo up in Canada, you know, still that will be an item then that the price will drop on eBay because it's going to be at multiple places. Funko might be the biggest example of this in that they share many of their exclusives with FYE and Toys R Us and these other spots. And so you can find these exclusives. Hot Topic. So you could potentially wander down to the Hot Topic over in a Horton and be able to pick up an exclusive there and don't have to fight that line. Now that's not for all their exclusives, but Funko brings a ton of items. And the thing about the shared exclusives, those also will be much cheaper if you do have to go the eBay route. So don't feel, again, like everything is kind of all or nothing here. I mean, there are definitely some items that can only be purchased at Comic-Con. Now, if you are searching for things, whether it be swag or exclusives, and it just doesn't end up working out for you, do remember that if you're going to shop eBay, give it a couple months. If you can wait till kind of November, that's a great time. I've talked about this, I think, on our podcast, but we didn't go to Star Wars Celebration Orlando. I'm going to be waiting till Comic-Con, and then I'm going to be looking for a couple Star Wars Celebration exclusives, because usually what happens is, as a big con, as you get to the next con, so for example, as SDCC fades away and people are thinking about New York Comic-Con, the market just dies down some and things start to stabilize in terms of price. And so you can find some good deals there if you're patient and look for those things. So if you can't dedicate the time to sleep overnight for a Hasbro exclusive or a Bandai exclusive or whatever, do remember there might be other options. Now, that's not to say that any of them are going to be necessarily as cheap. I mean, there are some items, particularly Mattel, that actually a lot of times will drop in price after the convention, but you never know. No one has a crystal ball. We can never know how expensive these things will go, but it is something to remember. Obviously, your time has a price, and even if maybe you are a floor person, like I consider myself, just because I'm a floor person doesn't mean I necessarily want to spend the night waiting to get into whatever the, a Lego brickhead heads or whatever it might be and get a ticket to that. So you do have to make a decision. Remember, when it comes to things like lotteries, you know, when you're talking about, like, let's say a dark horse, for example, that is a scary proposition, and it does become how much time can you invest into a lottery. I'm not a fan of investing time into uncertainty. It's one thing to wait a long time and know I'll get something. It's a whole nother thing to invest a bunch of time. Now, dark horse, as an example, usually it's a minimal investment. It's like a 5-minute wait to get, and so I'll do it. I'll run around, look for things. Okay, got what I can get. It's getting crowded. Okay, I'm going to run in here, get in line. Oh, I didn't win the drawing for Joss Whedon. Okay, that's fine. Whatever it might be. So have a good time with it. Try to see as many booths as you can. You know, the great thing about San Diego Comic-Con is I really do believe everybody that comes to Comic-Con is trying to bring their A game, whether it's for the panels, whether it's for the floor, whether it's for the offsite. Does it always deliver at an A execution? No, not by any means, but everybody's trying to, because it's just too expensive and too much work not to. And so everybody's investing a lot of money to have a booth on this floor. Even the tiniest of vendors, it's much more expensive than a lot of other cons. And so as a result, people are trying to bring their most creative, unique, and fun stuff there. And so if you're able to give them the time to check them out, see what connects with you, definitely recommend it. So if you're able to take the time and invest in that experience, it definitely can be worth it, because there's all sorts of fun things to be found out there, and I know for us it really enhances the experience. And we just like the idea that when we leave Comic-Con, we saw every booth, even if it was the tiniest small press or webcomic booth. You know, it doesn't mean we're buying from even a tenth of them, because there's so many booths, but it's really a nice feeling to know, like, well, at least we saw what Comic-Con had to offer on the floor. So again, divide and conquer, see if you can do it over the course of the days. Even with us doing so much on the floor, a lot of times we're finishing up the floor on Sunday. So with that being said, again, check out all these different articles over at the Unofficial blog. Follow along on social media with the team. There will be live reports. I mean, once we hit Monday, we will be down in the gas lamp, circling, looking for things. Obviously the floor, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we'll be sharing all kinds of live reports from there. So head there, probably not the website during those days. So with that being said, have a great time, and we will see you in line at San Diego Comic-Con.